Well, this got my attention, I have to say. Pro Football Focus Sam Monson, who is their lead NFL writer, wrote a post. I read it this morning. Says the Buffalo Bills, have the best wide receiver core, the best wide receiver group in the NFL. Sam Monson is on the line with us, I believe. Sam, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. How's it going, guys?
Good. Not since the days of Andre Reed, James Lofton, and my partner Steve Tasker has anybody thought the Bills had the best wide receiver core in the NFL. What are you thinking there, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I like the guys that they had brought in a year ago, Beasley and John Brown. I think that they were getting the right type of receiver, and then you bring in a Stephon Diggs, and it just catapults that group to a completely different level. And, you know, I'd always kind of thought that Stephon Diggs was a very good player anyway, and just from diving into the research and his tape to do this article, if anything, my opinion of him only went up. I mean, he is good at everything you need to be a wide receiver. And if you look at his production, the sort of the relative lack of production compared with, you know, superstars like Julio Jones or DeAndre Hopkins or the guys at the very top of the NFL list, I don't think the reason that he's not at that level is anything due to him. I think it's just because he's been in a run-first offense in Minnesota. He emerged kind of at the same time as Adam Thielen, so they inherently, you know, took some targets and took some production away from each other. But I think that you plug, you know, Stephon Diggs into the same situation as those other guys, and you get pretty much the same results.
Yeah, you made a great point about one of the complaints that Stephon Diggs had last year was the lack of targets. I mean, he just didn't get the ball enough from Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, an accurate thrower of the football, not the rocket arm, not a huge arm like Josh Allen, but it's going to be kind of a balance. You kind of expect, your thought was that Steph Diggs might get a lot more targets in Buffalo than he did in the run-first offense in Minnesota, but the quarterback throwing him might be a little less accurate. So the net give and take of that, going from fewer targets and a more accurate quarterback to more targets and a less accurate quarterback, may be what makes this Steph Diggs trade makes us able to evaluate it.
Right. It's going to be an interesting balance because, you know, obviously he grew frustrated with his time in Minnesota that the ball just wasn't coming his way enough. But when the ball did come his way, it tended to be pretty accurate. And Cousins, you know, threw some absolute dimes to Diggs over the past couple of seasons that a lot of quarterbacks would not have made. A lot of quarterbacks would not have put the ball where it needed to go and give Diggs a shot to make those catches. But, you know, Diggs was getting frustrated. Now, I don't know how much more or less frustrated he would be if he got a lot more passes come his way, but they didn't have the same level of accuracy. You know, they asked a lot more of him, and it's going to be interesting to watch. Does he get frustrated in Buffalo as well if the accuracy does become a problem, or is he happy with just being given more opportunities, whether the ball is necessarily where it needs to be or not? But I think the real key thing that the Bills have done over the past 2 years now is they've targeted receivers that specialize in getting separation. And I think that is such a smart thing to do in today's NFL. You know, we look for, when we're evaluating receivers, what should we be trying to identify as their single biggest trait? And for me, that's the key thing. You don't need to be, you know, 6'3" and 220 pounds. If you get open, that's the single biggest thing you can do for a quarterback in terms of maximizing the window he has to throw you the ball.
We're with Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus, who says the Bills have the best wide receiver core in the NFL. The question to target, Sam, is interesting to me. And I'm wondering if we had a poll of our listeners a week or so ago about who's going to lead the team in receptions next year. And there was sort of a consensus that even though Diggs may not lead the team in receptions, Beasley might, John Brown might. He might be the most effective receiver they have. Could it be that he wouldn't lead the Bills in receptions, even if they focus on him as a target in the passing game?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I don't see a reason why he wouldn't. You know, if you look last season, John Brown, like typically the slot guy would be the guy that would be a threat to lead the team in receptions, just from an efficiency standpoint. You know, a lot of teams will feed those guys the ball underneath, and they get a ton of targets and a ton of receptions, and you might get more catches than your quote-unquote number one receiver, but it's a very different type of pass being sent your way. But even last season, you know, John Brown had more targets, more receptions than Cole Beasley did, And, Stephon Diggs should step in above John Brown as a true sort of number one when it comes to target share. So, yeah, I don't see a good reason why Diggs wouldn't get the most targets and the most receptions on the team.
How high does this elevate the expectations for Josh Allen's improvement?
Yeah, I think it has to be high. I mean, between them surrounding him with the right type of receivers, between the Patriots losing Tom Brady and the door suddenly being wide open in the AFC East, I think expectations have to be huge for Buffalo right now. Not just Josh Allen and his development to take another step forward and sort of meet this receiving core where it should be, but also the whole team in terms of taking a step forward and being not just a team that hopes they can snatch the AFC East if the Patriots have a down year, but a team that expects to win that division and contend in the playoffs.
We're on the line with Sam Monson, Pro Football Focus lead NFL writer, the host of the Pro Football Focus NFL show. You say the Bills may have the best wide receiver group in the NFL. It's not just Diggs, right? You've talked about Brown and Beasley. Is there anybody else who kind of factors into that consideration? Isaiah McKenzie, we just had him on the show yesterday, maybe. Andre Roberts, anybody else who would contribute to them being the best receiver group in the NFL? What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got some interesting players like McKenzie and like Roberts further down, but it's really about that top three. And I think people underrate the quality of John Brown and Cole Beasley. They dropped a couple of passes more than they should have last season, but even then, it was more when those drop passes were dropped than the sheer volume of them. They combined for 10 drops last season, which is not a huge amount when you consider they had like 200 targets thrown their way. So I think they were overall a kind of underrated receiving duo anyway, and then you bump them each down one in the depth chart. Now John Brown is a quality number 2, Cole Beasley is a number 3, and as a trio, you've got 3 guys that all specialize in getting open and all do it at sort of different levels of the defense as their calling card. John Brown gets open deep, Cole Beasley gets open underneath, and Stephon Diggs gets open pretty much all over the field. So I think as a trio, you might have receiving groups elsewhere in the NFL. You think Tampa Bay, they probably have a stronger 1-2 punch, but I don't know that anybody has a better 1-2-3 than the Bills right now.